Hi, I'm Daniel, and today I'm at UK Bike Fit with Dan of UK Bike Fit for a pretty special video, Dan, and a special day in our relationship because I'm listening to you. It hasn't been something I've done in the past, but it is now. For those who haven't watched this series up to yet, I've had a long-going bike fit in which I've been tweaking things myself and not fully listening to Dan, but today I'm going to let you, Dan, put me in the position that you think I should be in. I historically have always had a high saddle, struggle with knee issues, and I've always done what I've done when I'm comfy. But today, I'm the student, you are the teacher.
I've got free reign using this jig. So we're going to fit this jig or position this jig to where I think you should be and then have a look at the difference compared to your normal riding position.
Yeah, I already know it's going to be a lot lower than I normally ride. It's going to feel weird, but I'm prepared to give it a go for the sake of you two.
For the clicks.
Exactly.
So we've got Dan on the sizing jig, which we use for frame sizing and people who come to see us before they buy bikes to figure out what bike to buy. But it's also really useful for making really quick adjustments and seeing the differences straight away. So we've got Dan in his normal riding position in terms of saddle height. And this is the, so you wish you looked like that. This is the height that Dan normally rides, and one of the things I've been trying to do with Dan for a while is drop his saddle height and shorten his cranks, because there's a lot of reach going on through the leg, the foot's doing a lot of work, he's towing down at the bottom of the pedal stroke, and there's a lot of movement at his pelvis. So I think with a lower saddle height and a shorter crank, we can eliminate all of that and have him riding much smoother.
Now, in previous videos, I've seen the comments and I've obviously heard Dan's feedback and so on, and I know that it looks like I'm reaching, but the point I want to get across is it feels comfy. But a conversation we've just been having is often you will feel comfy because that's what you're used to. It's the same as like training to ride in a time trial position. It's not comfy until you get your body used to it. And I suppose what Dan's trying to get across to me is that it's comfy now, but it is going to be causing you other issues. If you get comfy in a more like strong and sustainable position, that'll be better for the long term and for the short term as well. So that's the battle I'm facing, is that at the minute I'm thinking, this is fine, why would I change it? But let's change it and see what happens.
So we're going to make some adjustments to Dan's position now with the saddle height and the crank length, and we're going to see what differences that makes. I'm basically just going to put him in a position where I want his pedal stroke, so it looks smooth and it looks controlled, and he's using all the right muscles rather than all of the wrong movements around his hips. So we'll make those changes now and then we'll see the differences before and after. So we've had a little play with Dan's position and the bike, mainly at the back end of the bike, but we've also made some changes to the front end as well. So we've dropped the saddle height down and we've shortened the cranks to 160 millimeter cranks. Now, I know you've already shortened your cranks before, you've gone for 165s, haven't you? I've gone for 160s. Those are the two main changes that we've made at the back end of the bike, which is affecting his pedal stroke. And you can see it's much more stable in his hips. The hip flexion at the top of the pedal stroke, we've sort of come down this way with the saddle height, but we've also dropped the foot at the bottom of the pedal stroke, so we've kept the hip nice and open while still getting a low enough saddle height to keep knee flexion and keep his foot relatively controlled. You can still see he wants to pedal a little bit toe down and push into the front of his foot, and that is the brain's muscle memory of how he wants to pedal. Like Dan's been pedaling like that for a very long time, so as soon as you want to change that, with cycling being such a repetitive sport, the brain and those muscle memories that control what the body does when you pedal is very fixed, and it takes a long time to adapt, which is why normally after a fit we always say to people, well, go and ride for about 4 to 6 weeks, because that's how long it takes to make those neural changes to how the body moves. So those are the changes we made at the back of the bike, and then at the front of the bike I've lifted the front end up and extended it out, made it a bit longer, just to try and control his shoulders and arms a little bit better. So that's where I think it should be. Let's find out how that feels to Dan straight off the bat.
I mean, exactly as you say, Dan, you advise everybody to give it 4 to 6 weeks. I'm probably 4 to 6 minutes in, so it's going to feel very different. So that's immediately, it just feels different. The crank length, as you said, I've gone down to 165s on my own road bike, so this doesn't actually feel too much different. 5 mils, not really, neither here nor there. What does feel different is this leg range, is this, the saddle height. I've always self-diagnosed any knee twinges I've had is because of the angle I'm at the top of the pedal stroke. I don't know that for a fact, it's only just through trial and error. But it feels like I'm not getting my leg fully extended to get all the power out. Is that true? Am I missing out on getting power out because I'm not fully extending my leg, or is this fully extended?
This is extended as you want to be.
Right.
I think a lot of people come in and say that, like, especially if they've been riding with the saddle height that's been quite high for a long time, because they've been using those muscle groups like the calves and the backs of the legs to drive a lot of the power through, when actually you really want to be using the majority of your glutes and your quads to drive power through. In comparison, the calf is a really weak muscle. So if you're using that and towing down and pushing into the pedal with the calf, then you're not going to be as efficient than using all of that quads and glutes power through the majority of the pedal stroke. Yeah. The calf should be pretty passive through the pedal stroke.
Moving up to the back end, I do feel more stable. It is hard to really pin it down on an indoor bike, isn't it? Like, I'm not moving around, there's no bumps or anything. So I do definitely feel more stable, but I think I've got used to just being a little bit unstable. And if anything, I've convinced myself that, oh, you're not going to get any saddle sores, you just keep moving around a bit. I've sort of, coaxed myself into doing this thing all the time. So yeah, it does feel more stable. The front end, I don't own a bike that has this high of a front end, so it feels very different. And if you were to say, oh, that's the best position for you, I wouldn't be able to replicate it without buying a new bike. So the bars are wider, it's a bit higher than I'm used to. So that probably feels the most alien to me, especially because, we do a bit of racing, although we're not Tally Pigaccia, you still do want to get aero. I probably wouldn't want to ride a position like this on the front. But what I want to do and what I'm able to do could be different things, especially as I'm getting older.
Yeah. Can we talk about aero for a minute then?
Yeah.
Because this is, again, a common misconception around getting aero is, and you know what the most aero position is, it's forearms flat, elbows down, hands on the hoods.
No, it's actually sat behind 5 people.
That helps.
Yeah.
But it's not hands on the drops, which a lot of people go to. That is the most aero position.
Yeah.
So if you raise the front end up, especially if you're struggling with hip flexion problems, which you have been with longer cranks, if you raise that front end up, you're actually able to sustain that flatter position much easier than if you just slam the stem, drop the front end down and have a really low position. It's the same reason why I see in a lot of, in the TT world, triathlon world, you're seeing a lot of the front end stacks coming right up high.
They are, aren't they?
Massively, and shorter cranks again. So you can sustain the flatter position for much longer rather than sacrificing a bit of that frontal area for having to come in and out of that position because it's really hard to hold.
What you look like in your head's very different. When I look at crit race pictures, I'm often low because my bars are low, but I'm like that.
Yeah.
Rather than like that. But
yeah, and you flare your elbows out a little bit as well, which is another thing.
Okay. How important is this bit you've changed then? Like, is this going to make or break my riding, or is this just you'd be a little bit better if it's optimised?
I like to sort of think about it rather than sort of performance being more like, are you going to enjoy your riding a bit better? Because a lot of this stuff, you've struggled with injury on and off for a very long time, and you will be more efficient. Will not pass over that. You will be more efficient because you've got a better saddle height and you're not having to get into these positions that are unsustainable. But in terms of enjoyment, you're going to be able to ride for longer and stay injury-free for. Like, you reduce the risk of injury much more with this position rather than riding with components that aren't quite right for you. So in previous videos, Dan, the bike fitters of the YouTube comment section have told me my bike is both too big and too small. But what you've done here is put me in a position, and you've not gone through a full bike fit, but you've put me in a position that you think looks right, or thereabouts where you put me. And of course this spits out numbers which you can put in your calculator and tell me what size bike I should buy of all different brands. I have a Canyon Ultimate CFSL, lovely purple and blue colour, in a size large. Is that the right bike for me or not? No. Is it the bike or the size? So the difference that we've ended up with here versus your Canyon is the actual frame reach that we've ended up with is exactly the same by chance. The stack height of the front end is 6 centimeters taller than that bike. So if we were just looking at Canyon Ultimates, we wouldn't actually probably be able to find a frame size that is perfect for you because the geometry of that bike just isn't right. It doesn't suit. So let's say you did just size up. Well, yeah, you'd get closer to that stack height, but actually then the frame might go a little bit too long. And this is the difference that I try and like get across quite a lot of the time between geometry and frame size. The geometry is much more important than the frame size, because the geometry dictates the shape of the bike, and then you can choose the perfect size for that shape. Whereas some bikes just won't fit in any size because the geometry isn't quite right. So if that answers the question, like there's no right answer to whether that frame is small or large. I mean, it's probably a tiny bit small. If you like, that was your bike and you were dead set on it, we'd have to say, okay, well, size up in the frame and then have a shorter stem. But actually, if I was choosing a bike for you from scratch, I just wouldn't choose that bike.
Okay. Off the top of your head then, what other brands more suit this position that you've put me in?
So if we're talking about Canyons, like, because across their range...
I need a bike to match the t-shirt, to be honest.
If we're talking about Canyons, then the Endurace is going to be a much better fit, because the ratio of that frame stack to frame reach is going to be much more suited to where we've ended up. And a lot of the people, and you've already said it...
Like the one that I got an Endurace before the Ultimate.
Right, and you've already said, like, oh, I just don't think this position suits the style of riding that I do, because that's your race bike. Well, the Canyon Endurace, for example, or an endurance bikes in general, they're just a different shape of bike. They're no lesser bike. They're still carbon fibre. They're still the same weight most of the time.
I've got raised on my Endurace around Mallory.
Well, exactly. And if the position suits you better and you're able to get into those aero positions more comfortably because the stack's a little bit taller, then you're going to be faster. So I'd never look at a bike or an endurance bike and think, oh, that's not a race bike. It's just a different shape of bike. Okay. If you can race on it, if you get in a good position. So on medical grounds, I need a new bike. That's the conclusion. That is the conclusion. I'll write you a note.
Thank you. Okay. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below.